If you prepare for the most challenging scene, you're not going to do it well. You'll go in unprepared. The brain has it, the body has it. It will come out.
Some Hollywood stars were born to shine, but Al Pacino emerged from the shadows, and he has never fully escaped them. From a boy raised in poverty in the Bronx, losing his father at the age of 2, to a restless young man sleeping on park benches, he had only one thing to cling to: the burning desire to become an actor. And then, when the spotlight of The Godfather transformed Pacino from an unknown into a legend, the world believed he had it all. Yet behind each powerful role was a life on shaky ground: alcoholism, mental breakdowns, financial collapse, broken loves, children born amid conflict, and controversies that followed him even in old age. Even after stepping into his 9th decade, Pacino still stunned the public with unexpected headlines, from becoming a father at 83 to the Oscars 2024 mishap that rocked social media. For more than half a century, Al Pacino has not only delivered immortal performances, but has also stood as living proof of a stark truth: behind brilliance always lies a painful price. And it is this very tragedy that forged a legend. So who is Al Pacino? A theatrical genius haunted by the burdens of ordinary life? A cinematic monument who never found happiness? Or simply a man who for 50 years has left audiences with more questions than answers? Let us step into that journey, where light and darkness are forever intertwined, and the truth behind the legend is far more staggering than we could imagine. Alfredo James Pacino was born on April 25, 1940, in East Harlem, New York. His parents, Rose Girardi and Salvatore Pacino, were both Italian-Americans with roots in the small Sicilian villages of Corleone and San Fratello. But that home shattered far too early. When Al was just 2, his father left for California to work as an insurance agent, abandoning his young wife and child to a life of hardship. From then on, Pacino grew up in the South Bronx with his mother and maternal grandparents, Kate and James Girardi, in a cramped apartment where the absence of a father became a void that would never be filled. From childhood, Pacino was out of step with other kids. He began smoking at 9, drinking and experimenting with marijuana by 13, frequently fighting and skipping school. His rebellion led to expulsions from several schools. His mother tried to steer him back by enrolling him in the High School of Performing Arts, hoping art could save her son. But after bitter conflicts with his mother, Pacino dropped out at 17, a choice that further strained their already fragile bond. His teenage years were also marked by tragedy. His 3 closest friends, Cliffy, Bruce, and Pi, each died from drug overdoses. For Pacino, it wasn't just the loss of friends, but a brutal wake-up call. The Bronx streets could bury an entire generation if one didn't escape in time. He later admitted that without acting, he too might have ended the same way. To survive, Pacino worked any job he could find: usher, waiter, messenger, janitor, post office clerk, even in the circulation department of Commentary magazine. Some nights he had nowhere to stay, sleeping on movie theater seats, on the streets, or crashing on friends' couches. It was a period when he experienced homelessness right in the heart of glamorous New York City. And later, that raw reality became material for the characters he brought to life. Then came crushing blows. In 1962, his mother died of illness at only 43. A year later, his grandfather, the one figure he saw as a true pillar, also passed away. These back-to-back losses pushed him to what he called the bottom of life. With no anchor left, he became a drifting young man, torn between yearning and helplessness. Pacino would later confess that the pain of losing his mother never left him, and that everything he ever did on stage or screen carried one single hope: to show my mother who I became. The nickname Sonny, what childhood friends once called him, remained etched in his heart. Years later, he wrote the memoir Sonny Boy, not to boast of triumphs, but to record a childhood steeped in shadows and restless longing. The dream of becoming an actor was not just a career path, it was the only way out of ruin, the means to transform grief into strength. From the tenement halls of the Bronx, from the first cigarette at 9 and the haunting loss of his mother in his 20s, Al Pacino carried it all into his gaze, that piercing weapon that would later silence the entire world of cinema. And it was this shadow-filled youth that became the key to why, on screen, he always appeared as a man both fierce and wounded, a soul carrying more than one life within him. But even after deciding to pursue his dream, Al Pacino's artistic path was hardly any easier than his childhood. His first audition for the Actors Studio, the sacred temple of American acting, ended in rejection. It was a crushing blow, as if even his last dream had been shut out. Refusing to give up, Pacino turned to HB Studio in Greenwich Village, where he met Charlie Lawton, his teacher, confidant, and later his greatest source of spiritual support. Lawton recognized in the impoverished young man a raw, untamed fire and urged him to persevere. 4 years after that failure, in 1966, Pacino returned to the Actors Studio, and this time he was accepted. There, he studied directly under Lee Strasberg, the master of method acting. Strasberg taught Pacino to burn from within, to dig deep into wounds, memories, and personal pain in order to inhabit a role. For someone whose entire childhood was defined by deprivation and loss, this method fit like a tailor-made instrument, and it became the foundation of Pacino's singular acting style. But theory did not put food on the table. Pacino still lived in poverty, scraping by with small roles on off-Broadway stages. He played nameless characters, performed for sparse audiences in shabby theaters, and earned only meager wages. Yet those stages gave him a rare sense of peace, a refuge from personal chaos, where he could pour all his loneliness, rage, and sorrow into a role and, for a moment, forget the world outside. In 1968, after years of honing his craft in obscurity, Pacino reached a turning point. At the Astor Place Theater, he was cast as Murph in Israel Horovitz's play The Indian Wants the Bronx. The role was just a street punk, but Pacino infused it with all the fury and wounds of his own youth. The audience was stunned, critics raved, and in the end, he received the Obie Award for Best Actor, the first prize of his life, earned through his own pain and flesh. His co-star in the play was John Cazale, who would later become Fredo Corleone in The Godfather. Cazale won the Best Supporting Actor award, and their artistic bond laid the groundwork for a new chapter in American cinema. Around the same time, on a nearby stage, Pacino's then-girlfriend Jill Clayburgh was shining in Sugar Plum. The two shared days of hardship mixed with hope, bound together by their belief that theater could redeem their lives. It was during these performances that Pacino met Martin Bregman, the manager he would later call the architect of my career. Bregman not only recognized the erupting talent before him, but also envisioned the long path Pacino could travel. He was the one who opened doors that had seemed impossible, from The Godfather to Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon. If Strasberg taught Pacino how to ignite the fire, Bregman built the stage for it to blaze. A year later, in 1969, Pacino officially made his Broadway debut in Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie? As Tony, a drug dealer with a complex soul. Praise poured in. The press called him a gangster with the soul of a poet. The role not only established him in mainstream theater, but also defined the archetype that would mark Pacino's career forever. Outsiders, men on society's margins, dark yet human, dangerous yet full of poetry. After the lights of Broadway, Al Pacino began to step into the world of cinema. In 1969, he appeared in Me, Natalie, a romantic film starring Patty Duke. The role was small and fleeting, but for Pacino, it was his first ticket into the film industry. a world that had once seemed far beyond the reach of a boy from the South Bronx. 2 years later came the real breakthrough. In 1971, Pacino was cast as Bobby in The Panic in Needle Park, a heroin addict lost in the grim streets of New York. It wasn't a charming or audience-friendly role, but rather a character society largely despised. Yet Pacino threw himself into it with total commitment. He lived among addicts, absorbing their despair and fear. When the film was released, audiences were stunned by its chilling realism. The haunted eyes, the twisted body, the ragged breath of a junkie fully alive on screen. The Panic in Needle Park was not a box office smash, but it shocked critics. People began talking about a new face, an actor willing to plunge himself into darkness just to find the light of a character. And from there, Hollywood's door cracked open. It was during this time that Pacino forged his first professional creed. Take on the hardest, most painful roles, because only through the extremes of emotion can acting truly change your life. It was not only an artistic statement, but also a reflection of his scarred youth, where every pain could become material if transformed into art. And then destiny's door opened, but not easily. When Francis Ford Coppola suggested casting Pacino as Michael Corleone, Paramount immediately objected. They wanted a bankable star to guarantee ticket sales. Jack Nicholson, Robert Redford, Warren Beatty, Ryan O'Neal, even Robert De Niro auditioned. To the studio executives, Pacino was just a short, unknown actor who could never carry a multi-million-dollar film. But Coppola stood firm. Only Pacino could embody the darkness, silence, and mystery of Michael. The early days of filming were even more fraught. The wedding scene that opens The Godfather was shot first, and Pacino's deliberately subdued, detached performance made the crew, and even Coppola, begin to waver. Rumors spread. Pacino would be fired, and if that happened, Coppola too would lose his job for choosing wrong. To salvage things, Coppola gambled. He arranged to film the restaurant assassination scene early, the turning point where Michael becomes the cold-blooded heir of the Corleone family. Pacino poured all his quiet calculation into it, the tense eyes, the silence before pulling the trigger, the chilling gunshots. When the footage was shown to Paramount executives, their attitude shifted instantly, from doubt to conviction that Coppola had been right. Pacino's Michael had a transformative arc no one else could achieve. Ironically, right after that scene, Pacino twisted his ankle while leaping into the getaway car. The injury forced him to take painkillers just to continue filming, and he later admitted he briefly felt relieved, thinking the injury might be an excuse to walk away from a film everyone believed he would ruin. But fate would not allow it. When The Godfather premiered in March 1972, Hollywood nearly held its breath. No one expected a mafia film with a budget of just over $6 million to become a global phenomenon, grossing around $250 million worldwide, a staggering figure at the time. And amid a cast of legends, it was the fresh face of Al Pacino that stunned audiences. His Michael Corleone, evolving from an outsider son to a ruthless heir, became living proof of transformative acting. Overnight, Pacino went from nobody to a global icon. Yet at that very moment, a cruel paradox arose. That year's Oscars nominated Pacino for Best Supporting Actor, while Marlon Brando, with less screen time, was placed in the Best Actor category and won. For Pacino, it was not only a misclassification, but a denial of the effort he had poured into a role that carried the entire film. Furious, he boycotted the 1972 Oscars, refusing to attend, one of the rare acts of open defiance by a young actor against the Academy. Glory had arrived, but Pacino carried an odd unease. For decades afterward, he could not bring himself to watch The Godfather in full. He admitted that just sitting in a theater, seeing his face magnified on screen, and hearing the audience whisper made him feel suffocated, forcing him to slip out quietly. "I always both craved recognition and feared the eyes of the crowd," Pacino confessed. It was the central paradox of his life. A legendary movie star who could not face the very performance that crowned him. It wasn't until 2022, at the 50th anniversary celebration of The Godfather, that Pacino finally sat down at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood to watch the restored version from start to finish. This time, there was no fear, only awe. After half a century of avoidance, Pacino finally admitted, The Godfather truly deserved every word of praise, not just as an American classic, but as one of world cinema's greatest masterpieces. After The Godfather, Al Pacino not only held onto the spotlight, he challenged himself with demanding roles, turning each film into a stepping stone to cement his status. In 1973, he took on the role of Frank Serpico, a real-life New York cop who risked everything to expose corruption in the NYPD. The project was in turmoil when its original director dropped out at the last minute, but Sidney Lumet, master of socially conscious cinema, stepped in and captured its essence. Pacino immersed himself in the lonely whistleblower, living as Serpico to feel what it was like to have an entire system turn against you. The result was a performance both fierce and deeply human, earning him a Golden Globe win and an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. The film grossed nearly $30 million, a significant success at the time. Soon after, Pacino returned in The Godfather Part II, 1974. If in the first film Michael Corleone still wrestled with conflict, here Pacino transformed him into a figure of icy power. With dagger-like eyes and a face hardened against betrayal, his Michael became the tragic image of a man who sacrificed his soul for the throne. Once again, Pacino received an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, while The Godfather Part II entered history as one of the rare sequels greater than its original. The heights continued with Dog Day Afternoon, 1975, where Pacino portrayed Sonny Wartzik, a desperate man who robs a bank to pay for his transgender lover's surgery. Under Sidney Lumet's direction, Pacino exploded on screen, manic one moment, vulnerable the next, shouting to the crowd, then collapsing into despair. He turned a criminal into a raw, empathetic human being, drawing compassion instead of condemnation. Once again, he was nominated for Best Actor, cementing himself as not just a rising star, but the soul of 1970s cinema, a man who could transform social tragedy into art. After 3 consecutive years dominating the Oscars, Pacino entered the 1980s with bold choices, sometimes fiercely controversial. In 1980, he starred in Cruising, directed by William Friedkin, playing an undercover cop infiltrating New York's gay bar scene to hunt a serial killer. The film immediately sparked outrage from the LGBTQ+ community, with protests erupting at filming locations and screenings, accusing it of spreading harmful stereotypes. Yet, despite the uproar, Pacino was recognized for venturing into uncharted territory, exploring the conflicts and inner darkness of his character. It was not a beloved film, but it proved he never chose the easy road. 2 years later, in Author, 1982, Pacino tried a different tone. Here, he wasn't a gangster or conflicted cop, but a playwright struggling to balance career and family. A blend of comedy and drama, light yet tinged with melancholy, the role showed Pacino could do more than rage or writhe in shadows. He could embody the weary tenderness of ordinary people. Then, in 1983, came an explosive milestone, Scarface. As Tony Montana, a reckless Cuban immigrant who rises to drug lord infamy, Pacino set the screen ablaze with unrestrained fury. He immersed himself so deeply that he once burned his hand on the barrel of a freshly fired gun. Upon release, Scarface was savaged by critics as vulgar and excessively violent, while the Cuban community denounced its distorted portrayal. But time reversed everything. The film became a cult classic, then a pop culture icon, especially revered in hip-hop. Even its box office figures remain debated. Some sources list $66 million, others as high as $134 million. Whatever the number, Scarface is now immortal, and Tony Montana remains one of Pacino's defining roles. But right after the peak came a fall. In 1985, Pacino appeared in Revolution, a historical drama about the American Revolution. Rushed production, weak writing, shallow characters. The film collapsed both commercially and critically. The press branded it the lowest point of Pacino's career. He himself admitted to exhaustion and loss of direction. As a result, Pacino withdrew from film for 4 years, returning to the stage, where he rediscovered energy, conviction, and the primal love of acting that had fueled him from the start. After the downfall of Revolution, Pacino chose silence, retreating to the stage to recover. 4 years later, he returned to the screen and proved that his fire had never gone out. In 1989, with the release of Sea of Love, Hollywood called it the rebirth of Al Pacino. After 4 years away from film following the failure of Revolution, many believed his career had peaked. But as Detective Frank Keller, a weary, middle-aged cop drowning in loneliness, fumbling with love, and haunted by a sex-related murder case, Pacino erupted anew. He portrayed Keller with a brilliant blend of toughness and fragility, the hardened gaze of a man seasoned by life, yet trembling like a child longing for affection in private moments. The film was a commercial hit. Critics praised it, and all agreed Pacino had reclaimed his glory, an extraordinary comeback that placed him once again at the center of world cinema. As the 1990s began, Pacino continued to prove he was not confined to the image of a cold gangster. In Dick Tracy, 1990, he transformed into mob boss Big Boy Caprice with grotesque makeup and flamboyant, exaggerated acting, almost parodying the severity of his earlier screen persona. A year later, Frankie and Johnny, 1991, brought him back down to earth as a clumsy, tender-hearted cook, awkwardly courting a scarred, wary woman, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. From an outlandish caricature to an ordinary, vulnerable man, Pacino displayed rare versatility, as if daring the audience. Never think I can only do one kind of role. A golden milestone arrived in 1992 when he played blind Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade in Scent of a Woman. To fully embody the character, Pacino didn't just act when the cameras rolled. He wore dark glasses and used a cane offset to stay in character. Every labored step, every sudden turn of the head carried the bitterness of a life scarred by loss, yet also radiated charm and irresistible charisma. The legendary tango scene, where he led Gabrielle Anwar across the dance floor, became an immortal image of cinema, a testament to Pacino's ability to turn suffering into beauty. With Frank Slade, Pacino won the Academy Award for Best Actor, the only Oscar of his half-century-long film career. It was a belated but well-deserved recognition, a response to all the near misses that had come before. More importantly, it confirmed that Al Pacino was not only a gangster icon, but also an actor who could reach every corner of the human soul. After the triumph, Pacino plunged into roles of stark contrast. In Carlito's Way, 1993, he portrayed a former convict yearning for redemption, but dragged down by his past. Then came Heat, 1995, where he stood on the other side of the law as Detective Vincent Hanna, facing Robert De Niro in the legendary coffee shop showdown, a long-awaited duel of acting giants. City Hall, 1996, pulled him into the world of politics, playing a conflicted and shadowy mayor. The following works only reinforced his limitless range. In Donnie Brasco, 1997, he became Lefty Ruggiero, an aging, pitiable gangster, both criminal and tragic. That same year, The Devil's Advocate revealed a completely different Pacino as John Milton, a commanding, seductive lawyer who ultimately unveils himself as the devil incarnate. His flamboyant, controlled madness performance made the role one of the most memorable villains of the decade. Closing out the 1990s, Pacino returned with restraint and integrity in The Insider, 1999, embodying Lowell Bergman, the CBS journalist who helped expose the tobacco industry scandal. From morality to crime to devilry, Pacino proved he could traverse every spectrum of human nature, and wherever he went, audiences believed it was the truth. At the close of the 20th century, Al Pacino refused to rest on his old glory. He sought new roles and experiments, expanding the scope of his craft while expressing his personal creative hunger. In 1999, Oliver Stone's Any Given Sunday gave him the chance to play football coach Tony D'Amato. No longer a mobster or a cop, Pacino became a grizzled, fiery mentor caught in the whirlpool of power, money, and team spirit. His inch-by-inch locker room speech quickly became a legendary monologue, echoing as a declaration of resilience and the will to win. A year later, he ventured into Chinese Coffee, 2000, a personal project where he both directed and acted. It was a small film with a limited audience, but it revealed his love for literature and his reflections on friendship, failure, and dignity. At the dawn of the 2000s, Pacino placed himself in the landscape of modern cinema. Christopher Nolan's Insomnia, 2002, gave him a morally complex role. Detective Will Dormer, tormented by guilt, insomnia, and ethical decay. That same year, he tried Simone as a washed-up director forced to create a virtual movie star with technology, and in The Recruit, 2003, he played a sly, seductive, and calculating CIA mentor. Whatever the quality of the films, Pacino remained the center of attention, proving he could adapt to any cinematic context. Beyond film, Pacino left a brilliant mark on television. In 2003, he played Roy Cohn in Angels in America, a mini-series about the AIDS crisis and the rot of power, a performance that won him an Emmy. 7 years later, You Don't Know Jack, 2010, reaffirmed his stature. Pacino embodied Dr. Jack Kevorkian, the controversial advocate of assisted suicide. This time, he won both an Emmy and a Golden Globe, delivering a performance both chilling and profoundly humane. By 2013's Phil Spector, he had transformed again into the eccentric music producer accused of murder. Television, once considered second tier, became, in Pacino's hands, a stage equal to cinema. Meanwhile, he never let go of Shakespeare. The Merchant of Venice, 2004, placed him as Shylock, long portrayed as a ruthless usurer. But through Pacino, Shylock became a man of deep pain and seething rage, forcing audiences to confront his humanity pushed to the breaking point. Alongside acting, Pacino poured passion into literature and the stage. He directed Looking for Richard, a hybrid documentary where he explored and interpreted Richard III, seeking to bring Shakespeare closer to modern audiences. Later, he delved into Oscar Wilde's rebellious play Salome, adapting it into both Salome and Wilde's Salome, blending film, theater, and self-reflection. By this phase, Pacino no longer needed to prove himself a box office star. He was more like a seasoned artist, choosing his own path, sometimes pouring everything into Hollywood spectacles, other times retreating into personal, literary projects. His career became a canvas of many tones, not just a string of masterpieces, but a journey interwoven with bold experiments, self-parody, failures, and dazzling resurrections. He joined Two for the Money, 2005, with Matthew McConaughey, exploring the world of sports gambling in a mix of drama and commercial appeal. Pacino then appeared in a string of projects: 88 Minutes, 2007, a real-time thriller; Ocean's 13, 2007, playing the new enemy of the charming conmen; and Righteous Kill, 2008, reuniting with Robert De Niro in a tangled police drama. Most notably, Jack and Jill, 2011, gave Pacino one of his rare self-parodies, playing himself, obsessively infatuated with Jill, Adam Sandler, in dual roles. The role was savaged by critics, but it showed Pacino's courage to laugh at his own legendary image. Immediately afterward, he sought quiet again in Stand Up Guys, 2012, then plunged into introspection in the independent dramas The Humbling, 2014, and Manglehorn, 2014, films exploring the decline, aging, and stubborn pride of an artist. In 2015, Danny Collins brought a surprising breakthrough. Pacino played an aging rock singer struggling to find inspiration again. The role, both charming and human, earned him a Golden Globe nomination, proving that even in his 70s he could still move audiences. He continued with diverse films like Misconduct, 2016, Hangman, 2017, and The Pirates of Somalia, 2017. On television, Pacino shone once more. Paterno, 2018, the story of the legendary football coach entangled in a child abuse scandal, earned him Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. Then, in 2019, he reunited with Martin Scorsese in The Irishman alongside Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci in a mafia requiem marking the twilight of an era. After that, Pacino pushed further into TV with Amazon's Hunters, playing a Nazi hunter, and returned to the big screen in House of Gucci, 2021, as Aldo Gucci, a performance blending humor and tragedy. He didn't stop. Pacino remains busy with a slew of projects. Modi, a biopic about Amedeo Modigliani directed by Johnny Depp, The Ritual, a horror film based on the Emma Schmidt exorcism case, slated for release on April 18, 2025, along with Billy Knight and Killing Castro. In his 80s, he still throws himself into film sets like a warrior unwilling to lay down his arms. And it is this tireless presence that keeps Pacino's every public step in the spotlight. The clearest proof came at the 2024 Oscars. Tasked with presenting Best Picture, Pacino broke tradition. He did not read the list of nominees. Instead, he walked on stage, paused, and declared, "And the Oscar goes to Oppenheimer." The room froze, social media exploded, and many accused him of disrespecting the other nominees. Shortly after, Pacino explained he was simply following the producer's instructions to save time. Molly McNerney, Jimmy Kimmel's wife and the show's producer, confirmed his statement. And while debate still raged, Kimmel cracked jokes live on air, turning the incident into one of the most talked-about moments of that year's Oscars. Though his career has always read like an epic, Al Pacino's private life is filled with unfinished chapters. As early as the late 1960s, when he was still a struggling stage actor in New York, he met Jill Clayburgh. In 1967, the two moved in together. Jill was then a rising star on Broadway, and they shared a tiny apartment, hungry nights, and the belief that they would go far together. Their 5 years seemed steady, until fame struck too quickly after The Godfather, 1972. Pacino was swept away, while Jill felt left behind. They split in bitterness, and Jill later admitted, "I went through it all, self-hatred, hating him, pain, fear," a cut that Pacino carried with him for life. Afterward, Pacino had a brief fling with Tuesday Weld, then met Martha Keller on the set of Bobby Deerfield, 1977. The on-screen arguments quickly flared into real-life passion. They lived together for 2 years, as dramatic as the very film that brought them together. Marta once said, "Talking about us is like peeling off the layers of your own soul." But in the end, that love too dissolved, leaving Pacino once more adrift. Among the long list of women in Pacino's life, the sweetest and most tragic was his story with Diane Keaton. They met on the set of The Godfather, 1971, where Keaton played Kay Adams, Michael Corleone's wife. From the very first glance, their connection spilled beyond the screen. Pacino, shy before the sudden glare of fame, and Keaton, graceful, witty, able to draw anyone out of their shell. By 1974, they entered a complicated relationship that lasted until 1990, marked by countless breakups and reconciliations. A cycle both intoxicating and painful. Keaton once described him with love tinged with helplessness. "I was crazy for him. Charming, quirky, like a lost orphan child, and so beautiful it was unbearable." To her, Pacino was both lover and mystery, forever unsolved. Pacino, though deeply attached, carried a lifelong fear of marriage, of commitment, of losing his freedom. By the late 1980s, after nearly 2 decades of circling the same dance, Diane yearned for a final resolution. During the filming of The Godfather Part 3, 1990, she issued an ultimatum: "Marry me, or it's over." As always, Pacino chose to evade. He refused, and this time, Keaton knew the cycle was broken for good. Yet the tragedy did not end there. Ironically, while Keaton still held on to hope for a home together, Pacino was already in another relationship. He had met Jan Tarrant, an acting coach in New York. Not a glamorous star, Jan entered quietly, offering Pacino a strange kind of peace. And in 1989, Julie Marie was born. That moment was both Pacino's late-found joy, becoming a father for the first time at nearly 50, and the final irreparable blow to his love with Keaton. For while Diane waited for a proposal, Pacino had a child with another woman. To Keaton, it was not only rejection, but an unspoken betrayal. She walked away, leaving a void Pacino would never be able to fill. 30 years later, Diane still called him the love of my life. And Pacino, in old age, has reportedly phoned her more than once, reminiscing about the days they shared, like a man still haunted by regret. People say that among all the legendary roles, the belated Oscar, and the glitter of Hollywood, it was that love story that remained the one performance Al Pacino never figured out how to hold on to until the end. After the fracture with Diane Keaton and the brief chapter with Jan Tarrant, Pacino entered a new phase of life, but the relationships that followed were no less fragile. He was with Lyndall Hobbs, an Australian-born director and journalist, for 7 years. Hobbs once admitted that loving a famous man like Pacino was an unequal battle. The relentless media spotlight, the pressure of public image, and the fleeting on-set romances that came and went. Their seemingly solid relationship cracked when the press reported Pacino's rumored fling with Penelope Ann Miller, his co-star in Carlito's Way, 1993. Neither ever confirmed nor denied it, but the rumor left a scar in Pacino's private life. In 1996, on a chance flight, Pacino met Beverly D'Angelo, the American actress known for the hit National Lampoon's Vacation films. A fleeting conversation in the sky quickly turned into a whirlwind romance. Pacino, then in his 50s with a string of broken relationships behind him, suddenly found in Beverly a wit, independence, and understanding he couldn't look away from. They threw themselves into each other, and this relationship soon became one of the longest chapters in Pacino's otherwise unstable love life. After a few years together, on January 25, 2001, Beverly gave birth to twins Anton James and Olivia Rose. For Pacino, it was an almost surreal moment. Nearing 60, for the first time, he felt he had a real family. The twins became the center of his world, erasing in part the shame of a boy who had grown up without a father and allowing him to experience the simple happiness he had never known. Friends recalled Pacino holding his children with eyes both trembling and radiant, as if he were cradling both his lost past and a renewed future in a single moment. Yet love between Pacino and Beverly could not escape the fate of his past romances. Differences in personality, career distance, and Hollywood's looming shadow drove them apart. By 2004, they split bitterly. What followed was inevitable, a custody battle. Pacino, long labeled by the public as a detached father, after brief relationships and children he did not live with, took a different stance this time. He refused to be just a provider of money or an occasional visitor. He wanted to be present, to take part in every step of Anton and Olivia's upbringing. His determination led to court hearings and tension with Beverly, but in the end, they found balance, co-parenting. This arrangement not only saved the father-child bond, but turned Pacino into a more devoted father than ever. Friends said he would put aside scripts, delay filming schedules to take his kids to school, attend festivals, or simply share dinner together. Years later, Beverly D'Angelo openly admitted that Pacino's dedication as a father to Anton and Olivia earned her respect, even though they could not live under the same roof. One might have thought Pacino would close himself off after such upheavals. Yet in 2008, he began dating Lucila Sola, an Argentine actress nearly 3 decades younger. Pacino became a father figure to Sola's daughter, Camila Morrone, who later stepped into Hollywood and gained fame for her relationship with Leonardo DiCaprio. With Sola, Pacino found a rare calm, not a legal marriage, but 10 years of cohabitation, sharing, and understanding. Still, the age gap, work schedules, and public scrutiny eventually ended the relationship in 2018. Once again, Pacino left a long relationship empty-handed. No marriage, no permanent vows. All he carried with him were the women he had once loved deeply, the children who testified to his fatherhood, and a question that has never found an answer. How could a man embody every role so perfectly on screen, yet never manage to keep the simplest role of all, the role of a husband? After parting ways with Lucila Sola, Al Pacino entered a brief period of quiet, as if he needed time to mend the wounds of love. But in 2018, Hollywood was shaken once again when he was seen alongside Israeli actress and singer Maytal Dohan. At 78, Pacino embarked on a relationship with a woman 36 years younger, a gap that seemed impossible to bridge. The press called it the late gamble of the screen legend, while Maytal herself made no attempt to hide the truth. It's hard to love someone so much older, even if that someone is Al Pacino. In less than 2 years together, they appeared hand in hand at numerous events, stirring both curiosity and admiration. Yet in the end, generational differences, lifestyle clashes, and the relentless pressure of public scrutiny became an unbreakable wall. When they split, Maytal still spoke warmly of Pacino, but admitted the love could not last. It was a gentle ending, yet it left another sad crease on a face already lined with too many farewells. One might have thought old age would bring Pacino peace, but fate seemed intent on playing tricks. In 2022, he went public with Noor Al-Fallah, a film producer 53 years his junior. If his romance with Maytal had been deemed mismatched, this new relationship ignited an even greater storm. Some argued Pacino was seeking companionship in his twilight years, while others suspected Noor of seizing a golden ticket. But all the whispers faded when, in June 2023, Noor gave birth to a baby boy, Roman Pacino. Few knew that Pacino initially requested a DNA test. At 83, he doubted he could still father a child, and the suspicion itself became a media firestorm. The results confirmed Roman was indeed his son, a revelation that brought both bewilderment and overwhelming joy. Pacino had become a father before, often in the shadow of breakups and disputes, but this time, so late in life, he held Roman as if the boy were a miracle. Roman was not only his child, but also a chance to heal the father-son gaps that had haunted his past. Yet happiness was short-lived. Just 3 months after Roman's birth, Noor unexpectedly filed for full custody. Pacino agreed to let her be the primary guardian, but insisted on joint custody, because the absence of his own father in childhood meant he could never allow the same cycle of pain for his son. For Pacino, being a present father mattered more than any role he had ever played. Today, Pacino and Noor are no longer lovers, but they maintain what they call a good friendship. Together they care for Roman, and Pacino often video calls his son, playing the harmonica for him. That simple image, a nearly 85-year-old legend bent over a tiny instrument, his aged face lit by a childlike joy, has touched many hearts. Among all the glory that once enveloped his life, perhaps this is the moment Pacino has finally grasped the true meaning of the word family. While his private life constantly swirled with turbulent romances, Pacino's inner world carried conflicts just as fierce. Born into an Italian family, he was baptized in the Catholic tradition, but as he grew older, Pacino did not practice the faith. He openly admitted to leaning toward agnosticism, half believing, half doubting, as a way of keeping distance from religious frameworks in which he had never found full comfort. In the 1970s, as fame ballooned after The Godfather and Serpico, Pacino fell into another kind of darkness, addiction to alcohol and drugs. He recalled that it began with a drink or a few pills to shift his mood, but he soon realized he had lost control. By 1977, he admitted he had become a true addict. Fortunately, Pacino turned to therapy and committed himself for 25 years to gradually regain balance. In those hardest days, he once bitterly remarked, "If I had won the Oscar in 1973, I might not even have been able to climb the stage to accept it." That line was both sarcasm and brutal truth, an artist nearly drowned by fame and substances. But life never stopped testing him. In 2020, Pacino suffered a serious health scare. His heart fell out of rhythm, requiring emergency resuscitation. That near-death experience forced him to reconsider his beliefs once more. From then on, Pacino leaned firmly toward skepticism about an afterlife. To him, there was no heaven or hell, only the fragile breath of life inside the body, and the only thing a person could do was grasp the fleeting moments of existence. More painful than illness was a financial blow. In 2011, Pacino discovered that his accountant and financial manager, Kenneth Starr, had defrauded him in a Ponzi scheme, costing him up to $50 million. Starr was later sentenced to 7 years in prison, but the money Pacino lost would never return. To recover, he was forced to take on projects purely for income, commercials, talk shows, and even roles he did not truly love. Pacino called that stretch a crazy time, but one that taught me what resilience really means. At an age when many of his peers had retreated into quiet retirement, Pacino still had to rise after every wound, whether in love, health, or finances. And it was precisely these upheavals that carved deeper layers of tragedy into him, turning Pacino into a figure at once radiant and fragile. In his 80s, while many of his peers have chosen to retreat into the shadows, Al Pacino continues to step into the light. The Ritual, a horror film based on the exorcism of Emma Schmidt, marks a powerful return. Filmed in Mississippi in early 2024 and slated for release in June 2025, the project features Pacino as Father Theophilus Riesinger, a role that shows he still dares to venture into the thorny realm of faith, where light and darkness wage a fierce struggle. At the same time, Pacino is part of Maserati, The Brothers, a project retelling the story of the family that founded the legendary car brand. Sharing the screen with Anthony Hopkins and Andy Garcia, he portrays one of the central figures of Italy's industrial golden age. The film began shooting in Rome in mid-2025 and is scheduled for release in the fall. Not stopping there, he also appears in Gus Van Sant's Dead Man's Wire, revisiting the shocking 1977 kidnapping case. The project is expected to premiere at major film festivals such as Venice, promising to bring Pacino back to the pinnacle of artistic red carpets. Meanwhile, In the Hand of Dante, adapted from Nick Tosh's novel, reveals a Pacino still obsessed with literature, transforming pages into screen with his haunting presence. Notably, 2024 also saw him complete Lear Rex, a modern version of King Lear directed by Bernard Rose. From his early days passionately performing Shakespeare on off-Broadway stages, Pacino has regarded the tragedies of the bard as his spiritual home. And at nearly 85, returning to Lear feels like a circle closing, at once bleak and majestic. Beyond the screen, Pacino has created unexpected milestones. In June 2025, while working in Rome, he became the first film star to be granted a private audience with Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican. For a man who has spent a lifetime questioning religion, the moment carried a strange paradox. Pacino standing before the greatest spiritual authority in the world, carrying with him a lifetime of wandering and searching. At nearly 85, Pacino has not retired. He continues to live as though each new role is evidence against death, each project a way of saying to the world that he is still here, still burning bright despite the encroaching dark. For more than half a century, Al Pacino has been more than an actor. He has been a school of acting in himself. From The Godfather to Scent of a Woman, from cold-blooded gangsters to shattered souls, he has always pushed characters to the outer limits of emotion. The method techniques he learned from Lee Strasberg became, in Pacino's hands, an art of burning from within. Each role not just an act, but a whole other life lived. Pacino's influence spans Hollywood. Actors of later generations such as Sean Penn, Johnny Depp, Christian Bale, and even Leonardo DiCaprio have acknowledged learning how to listen to the heartbeat of a character from him. He has also left an enduring mark on Broadway, with Shakespeare as his spiritual anchor. Personal projects like Looking for Richard and Wild Salome prove that Pacino is not just an actor, but also a researcher, an artist driven to decode the human condition through the language of theater. In popular culture, Pacino has become an icon. The line, "Say hello to my little friend," from Scarface transcended cinema, becoming immortalized in hip-hop, film, and everyday life. Anywhere the image of the American gangster arises, from Corleone to Montana, people think of Al Pacino's face and voice. Yet perhaps his greatest legacy does not lie in an Oscar statuette or multi-million-dollar films, but in proving that art can save a life. A poor boy from the South Bronx who once slept in theaters, who battled addiction and despair, survived through acting, and from there gave the world dozens of unforgettable characters. Al Pacino's life is a string of paradoxes. Dazzling talent paired with private heartbreak, artistic triumphs alongside family loss, glory interwoven with scandal. He loved deeply, but rarely held on to anyone for life. He grew wealthy, but was once defrauded into losing it all. He stood at the pinnacle, but still wrestled with darkness inside himself. At nearly 85, Pacino refuses to step away from the spotlight. Each new film, each public appearance, is a reminder. Legends do not live only in memory. They live, breathe, and perform. And when we look back on his journey, we see clearly. Al Pacino has left us not only immortal roles, but also proof that even in pain, art can blaze into light. So after all the tragedies and triumphs Pacino has endured, what is it that makes him a legend in your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe so together we can keep honoring Hollywood's immortal legends.